Hi, this is David Odell with Azteca Concrete. That's who is placing the concrete here today. I just arrived here on the pour. They're doing about 100 yards on this one, and they just started. They have a boom pump out here, about 12 guys on site. And these yellow tubes that you see there, it's not rebar, it's not wire mesh, it's post tension. They're cables that run through those sleeves. After the concrete gets placed, after it's cured out, they tighten those cables, and that's what holds it all together. There's no footing. If you'll notice, there's no footing around the perimeter. This is just a solid 8-inch thick 4,500 psi concrete pour. There's the cables. You can see them coming out of the form. Those will get tightened, clamped, and cut off. You never want to cut into a slab that has post tension, because if you cut a cable because of the tension that's on those, you could have a real problem. It could actually snap and break the concrete. So that's why at the end of the job, they're going to put a stamp that says post tension on it, and it's always in the garage. The garage portion of the slab will have that stamp that says do not cut post tension slab. They're using an aluminum screed. Marcus, the owner of Azteca, he's running the boom pump right now. 5-foot tamp. This is the big rock, so he's tamping it down with a 5-foot jitterbug. And it's getting followed up with a 4-foot magnesium bull float here. So everything's monolithic pour with the patio, the front porch, and the garage. Even though there's step downs to the garage, patio, and front porch, like this is the patio area right here. And I'm sure it'll be added on to in the future. So it'll have awning coming over the top of this, or it'll be integrated with the upper floor of the house, cantilevered over this little patio cover. So it'll be somewhat shaded. See that little pink tag on that pipe? That means that it's good to pour. It has been pre-treated with a termite pre-treatment tag. So right in this area, what you have to do is have all the dirt sprayed with a termite pesticide before you can pour the concrete. A little look at the boom pump operation here. S&S Concrete Materials supplying the concrete. And you can see, because the concrete's a little on the wet side, it's not really stacking up in that stem wall.
This load looked a little wetter.
And it's also due to the pressure. There's a lot of pressure coming out of the hose, so trying to push it in there, it's just forcing it out the bottom. So as you shovel it in, it stacks up, because you're not pushing it that much force down the stem wall with a shovel. As far as crack control joints go on the slab, they're recommended every 225 square foot on the big slab is what they call for. So they're going to saw cut that the very next day. But as for the garage, patio, and entry, those will be wet cut today. And you'll get a chance to see all that in action. The guy you're looking at right now, he's your setup man. He's also the one that set all these forms up. And now he's learning how to finish. So he's kind of dual purpose guy. A little bit of everything. This is your garage area. And you can see it's a very big garage. You could fit a couple RVs in there, 40 foot long. the clearance through the garage door will allow for it as well. So all these houses on this hillside are designed for RVs, boats, whatever you want. It'll accommodate it. And this is in the Laughlin Ranch area in Bullhead, Arizona. I've got all the plastic chairs on there holding up the post-tension cables. You know, it's interesting. I was talking to Marcus a little bit about these post-tension cables, and you know, a lot of times they don't maintain perfectly straight from one end to the other because they're not tight. So as they tighten them, you're putting pressure sideways on them, and that's when you actually get cracking until the other cables. Now, if you could pull them all simultaneously, they would counter each other in both directions, but you can't. So anyway, that's how post-tension works. Here's a nice tool I got from Tomahawk, and I want to introduce these guys to the Tomahawk sprayer because I really like it. So I thought, you know what? These guys could really use this thing. It's perfect for spraying because you got to spray curing compound out here. It's mandatory. You're not going to get away with not spraying curing compound. Also, you can spray top cast through it. Even though top cast is really thick, it'll spray it out in a fine mist because this has a really high PSI. It's 2-stroke powered. It runs a 91 octane. It comes with a fan tip, which I don't care for. So I ended up getting a cone tip off the old Hudson. You know the Hudson pump ups? I just break those down and scavenge parts on them nowadays. And then I just go to these units. But I scavenged the cone tip and the extension nozzle, and I just put it onto this, and now you got a really good sprayer. Here's the starting process. It's got a little primer at the bottom of the car. Pump that a couple times. That little knob there that you're looking at, that changes the pressure so you can go to a low or high flow. It's got a built-in net to capture any debris. Even though this thing pumps so much pressure, you don't get clogs because it blows them through. You don't have to keep breaking it down, clearing the tip, like you would typically with, the pump-up sprayers. This will just blow them right on through, and you just keep on going.
What kicks it in? Just the handle? When you push that, it's gonna...
Yeah.
This is on low flow.
Holy shit.
Marcus!
Anyway, we're going to get a good chance to watch that Tomahawk in action at the end of this job. Typically, they'd have to walk around this whole job to cover it, but with that Tomahawk, probably just walk around the perimeter and shoot it out to the middle, unless there's some wind. If there's a wind issue, then that could be a problem. Then you have to get in there at some point. Okay, here's the second pass with the bull float. At this point, you're really gonna really work out the dips and the holes. There shouldn't really be anything major at this point, but if there is, it'll cover pretty easy. Now, as he works with the bull float, right behind that comes in the Fresno. First pass with the Fresno, so you notice there's no weights on it at this point, but there will be later on in this particular process. Here's Greg, the concrete finisher, which you've probably seen him on another one of my jobs. He's getting on there relatively early. It's better early than late, and that's the exact philosophy that you use with concrete or anything for that matter. Now here's some handmade weights. These guys made these up. It's just a whole bunch of 3/4 rebar welded together, and that's how they get their weights. The bolt pattern and hold downs, as you can see along the perimeter, they're wet setting those. They're wet setting them about every 4 to 6 feet all the way around. 1/2 inch bolts, 10-inch long. There's your entry, that little entryway there. Front door is dead ahead. So he got out there. He's kind of learning the finishing aspect of it. So he got out there early. The foreman pulled him off and said, get off of that. Basically, it's too early. So he did. And now he got a hole in it. He's not real happy with that. So they're sprinkling a little concrete in to fill in that hole where that knee board went on a little prematurely. Right here is doing control joints in the concrete. This is the garage area. These joiners are 3/4 inch by 3/4. They're fairly wide, so they're real forgiving when you're joining. So he's just freehanding these. He didn't snap a line or anything. He's just eyeballing it for the most part, and they're coming out really straight. Here's the back patio area. He did the same thing back here. These get tool jointed. Even though the post tension runs through the whole thing, you could still potentially get cracking. But the idea behind the post tension is that even if it does crack, it still holds it all together, so it can't separate. Although any cracking is really no concern with a post tension slab. It can crack wherever it wants, and when they tighten the cable up, it pulls everything together and it doesn't move at that point. Right now they're running a 1/2 inch. Now I think he's got a 3/8 radius on that cove tool. He went real minimal. And you can go smaller than that even if you want. Like if you're getting in there late stripping and you don't have a lot of cream to work with, you'll probably want to go with a 1/4 inch cove. That way you don't have to bust a lot of cream loose and slap it into that radius. Now the power trowel is starting to open up this thing, and they have 2 of them. And if you've seen my one of my previous videos where my power trowel didn't run, that's why they bring 2, just in case one doesn't run. They have another one ready to fire up. Here I am. I'm starting to get into some action right now because I noticed that we had one guy going around the perimeter with a hand float, and he never troweled it, never coved it. So, and it was getting hard in between the hand floating and the troweling. So I went ahead and started troweling it out. And I was getting bored anyway, just running the camera and walking around. So I had to get a little action in, you could say. I didn't have the cove, so I just squared it up on the bottom. This will be visible from the inside of the garage, so it's going to have to look good. And they will be brooming the face of this. They already had an edge on here, and I didn't have a hand edger on me, so I'm just freehanding the whole package. The cove, the top radius, just one tool does it all if you can use them that well. Found a little hole there that I had to put some rock in. Sometimes when you find the bigger holes, you can't just slam some cream in there because inevitably the cream's gonna fall out of there. So you need something like some rocks to get into those holes when they become that big. That way it's going to hold up a lot better. Here's a little intricate piece of work, form work here. I don't know the purpose of it really, but it had a little something going on there. I guess it takes the place of a king stud or something by popping it out a little bit. Okay, now I'm running, kind of cleaning up these joints, trying to get ahead of that power trowel. I think he already dropped down one time and hit a couple squares with the power trowel. Now I'm reopening them. All these joints, he just freehanded them in, except for this long one right here that I'm working on. That one they put a string line on and before he cut it, but all the rest he just freehanded them, and they're pretty straight too, actually, for a freehand. I had to adjust them a little bit, but it was only like maybe a ½ inch here and there. But that's the nice thing about that particular joiner. If you're learning how to do concrete and you want to, that's the joiner to get. That big 3/4 wide, because you can shift it around when needed. So right now, the power trowel is not going to catch the edges around the bolts and then get up over the form and around all the steel stakes, the kickers and uprights and what have you. So you're going to have to go around the perimeter with a trowel. And that's what we're doing here. We're going to stay in front of that machine, trying to get the edges real nice. And then when you come through with the power trowel, he's just basically hitting the middle. If you'll notice, just the kickers are left on. Here's an upright that's still in play. But most of the uprights came off early, although they didn't really need to because there's no footing on this. It's just an 8-inch slab. Now, if you had a footing, most likely the bottom of those stakes would have been buried in concrete, so you'd have to get them out early. At least your vertical stakes. Your kickers you could leave in indefinitely until, you socket or whatever. But so that's the nice thing about post-tension. You don't have to worry about getting stakes buried in concrete because there's no footing. As I trowel around the perimeter, whenever I see a hole or something like that in the joint or on the edge, I'll just slap a little cream in there. And then when the next tool runs by, it'll have something to work with. Now on this joint right here, you can see it was crooked right here. It was swinging to the left. So as I'm pulling back right now, I'm trying to push it to the right to get that little bow out of it. And it was... with some joiners, it's difficult to squeeze them over, especially with the big rock at this stage. But this joiner, because of the weight of it and the big radiuses, it's able to do that kind of stuff pretty easily. Now I'm just cleaning up the joints. And this joiner has been so well used that it's kind of bowed up on the edges. So when I'm running it, it's not even leaving lines on the sides. So you just run that at the end and then you're good to broom. You don't have to knock out your joiner lines or anything. Oh, you see that? I need a little water on there. I ended up just spitting on it a little bit. It was pretty tight right there. And that works too. They've got 4. You can see the other 2 foundations that are already set up. Those are ready to go. So they're going to do 1 of these a day. And what they typically do in these jobs is they'll get a bunch ready, depending on the weather conditions. They'll just set up. When they see a good weather pattern coming in, then they'll pour, then break away and get back to setup and wait for another good pour day. And what determines a good pour day is wind, because wind is pretty severe here, and heat. Wind is really bad to pour in. Anything over about 15 miles per hour, it gets tricky to do concrete. So you're looking for good days, and then heat also is a real issue that you're going to have to contend with. So all those things come into play. You don't have to worry about rain or freezing, but there's other elements you'll have to deal with. You notice how the power trowel is trying to stay away from the joint. If he was to run that thing right on top of the joint, pretty hard, it would knock rocks into the joint and be very difficult to reopen a clean joint again. So he's working both sides of the joint. He comes over it real quick with the machine, then works up to the joint with the machine. That's the way you have to do it, when you're doing joints with a power trowel. Here's your big boy nylon broom stroking this concrete. And that's your entry right there. The type of wood that they're using it's kind of like, I think it's OSB, but it's 2x8 or 2x12. The nice thing about that particular type of wood is it doesn't bow on you. When you go to stockpile that and get ready for the next job to come up, you can stockpile it pretty much indefinitely, and it's going to stay straight all the time. The only thing it's going to get is a lot more holes in it from nails, but that's about it. Also, the edges will crush on you if you're not careful. If you drop that stuff on the edge, you can knock chunks out of the corners and stuff. So that's the only thing you got to be concerned with. Then, of course, you don't want to cut them that often if you can avoid it. So this concrete's really hard at this point, and you can see that right behind the power trowel, we have a funny trowel man. He goes out, he's running 2 poles. Power trowel man goes about 15 feet, stops, lets the funny trowel guy catch up, and then runs another 15. So this is going to be pretty much finished product on the garage floor. Right after that funny trowel hits everything, that's finished product. You could burn it smooth with a power trowel if you wanted to stay here a couple more hours with it, but the funny trowel gets you home quicker. So we had to keep the strongest guy. We had to keep him back to carry this, because when you put liquid in a backpack, it gets heavy. But here it is. He's still getting used to using it, so it's going to get better. But it's looking pretty good right now. And this particular type of curing compound that you're using is a pretty thick one. It's not like the reds and clears are pretty thin, but this white one, it's a pretty thick agent. And it's spraying it in a fine mist, so that's good. I mean, you're not going to do that behind a Hudson. It'd be difficult. And the nice thing, he didn't even get one clog in it. And if he did, he didn't know it because it blew it through. We did have some high winds starting to roll up after completion, and that's why the pour was started early, because normally your morning hours up until about noon, it's pretty good here. That they could kick up afternoon at any point in time. So if you can kind of get to a point with the concrete where it's almost finished, then you're in good shape. Right there, I don't know why he walked through the entry to come out, because that part is going to be exposed with no floor covering, but He should have stayed up on the, you know, the raised part, because that's going to get tile, most likely travertine or marble or something. But oh well, they probably won't show up anyway, you know, because it's so hard already at this point. So I think it'll be okay. But anyway, thanks for watching the video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Stay tuned for the next one, because it's going to be a real beauty as well.